I look forward to meeting our guests, and I've been looking forward to meeting my guest today especially. I mentioned earlier that Roy began his career as a rather successful young lawyer, but he had a life-changing illness, put down the law books and picked up the pen to write books. He turned to writing, is now an author, public speaker, but is back in law in a different way as a lecturer at the University of Sydney Law School, and Roy joins us today. Welcome, Roy.
Thank you for having me, Keith.
Good. What drew you to the legal profession in the beginning?
It was really my father who nudged me into it. I was from a family of journalists, in fact. My brother is a journalist, my father was a journalist. I was, to this day, the only lawyer. And it was the natural thing to do for someone with an interest in words and the humanities.
Yes.
I was never going to be a doctor, so the law it was.
Yeah. And you experienced some success and distinction and become a partner in a firm, so that's important.
I did, and that was great experience for me, great training. I can't honestly say I enjoyed it terribly much, but I certainly learnt an enormous amount about how the world works and how to write, how to mount an argument.
But your world changed as well, didn't it? You went through a time of illness,
yes.
And eventually you turned to writing.
I did. I converted to the faith in my mid-30s,
yes.
as you said, and for many people in my world that was a surprise. So I didn't come from a practicing Christian family. Most of my friends weren't Christians. So a lot of people were surprised and asked me, what's happened to you, Roy?
Yes. Yes.
We don't really understand it. And I realised my early attempts to explain myself weren't very good. So, right, I've got to hone my answer here.
Yes.
As Peter says, you've got to be ready with an answer.
To give a reason.
Exactly. So I took that seriously, and it started out as just a series of dot points, then an essay to myself. Anyway, to cut a long story short, it turned into that, into God actually.
So these books really become a living apology, as far as you're concerned, for the Christian faith.
Yes. It's apart from God actually, it's soft apologetics. The others are biographies and
yes.
histories,
yes.
but all the time trying to educate Australians about Christianity, what it actually is. Put aside the myths and legends.
Now, many successful writers have reasons for why they write. And when I look at these books we've got on the left there, we've got the story of a famous... but it's this one that fascinates me as a title. I think of Love Actually, the film. Did you pinch it from there?
I did. I admit it unashamedly. So it came out, I think, 5 years after the movie.
So really what you're really asking is questions about Jesus that people are asking or ought to be asking.
That's exactly right, Keith.
Yeah.
This is what it's actually about. I actually didn't start with Jesus. I started with the concept of a creator.
Yeah.
Creator God.
Yeah.
That's what got me first thinking about religion. Then I looked at Jesus, the history of the early church.
And you've certainly explored the faith of Australian prime ministers. That's an interesting theme, especially now as we've got more of an openly confessing Christian than we've ever had, really.
Indeed. Well, certainly the first Pentecostal.
Yeah.
Arguably the first evangelical. But in fact, Australia has a very rich history of prime ministers with very strong religious convictions across party lines and going right back to federation. I found it fascinating and a real eye-opener to look at all that.
But Arthur Stace is probably, out of all the books here, the one that people will think of when they think of Sydney, won't they?
Oh yes, it's just a wonderful Sydney story. It's got everything, all the big events, both the world wars, the depression. Wonderful character, Arthur.
What do you prefer to write out of those two? Because they're two very different genres there. One is telling a story through individuals. These are much more reflective, and they're probably deeper books, really, aren't they?
They are. Look, the one that was most fun to write was the Prime Minister's book.
Yes.
It combined for me my two great passions, which are Christianity and politics. So putting it together and having the honour of meeting some of our Prime Ministers, like John Howard, Kevin Rudd, Gough Whitlam when he was still with us. I loved that. I loved trying to tease out of them what really makes them tick.
So, do you think your legal training has helped you when you start to write?
Oh, unquestionably.
Yeah.
What you're really paid for as a lawyer is to write things down with precision, or to say them with precision if you're a barrister. And therefore, it's great training. I don't think it's any coincidence that in the history of the Western world, lawyers have been predominant in politics.
Yes, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's all about words.
Tell us about Bradfield, because you're writing about Bradfield.
Yeah, wonderful character. Australia's greatest engineer, arguably. Designer of the Sydney Harbour Bridge, of course, but also the Sydney railway system. He was a Queenslander, actually.
Oh, you don't need to bring that into the story.
Yeah, it's from Ipswich. It's very much a tale, son of British working class parents,
Sure.
scholarship boy to Sydney University, great Anglican, by the way.
Roy, if someone's listening to us today and they want to pick up a pen and pursue a career in writing about their faith, what would you say to them?
Do it by all means, but do it for the love of it. It's not easy to get published, particularly a book. Start perhaps with an article, and don't expect to make a living out of it. Do it for the love. Do it because there's something inside you that you really want to communicate to other people.
Yes, there's no Rolls Royce outside, is there, from your journey in today?
No.
But tell me, then, if somebody's thinking about that, they're going to have to do the Jesus thing, not give up, aren't they? They're going to have to.
I was rejected by 36 publishers. I had a perfect set of rejection slips before finally someone
Make a book out of the slips.
took up God, actually.
Yeah.
It's not an easy road in that sense, but it's a very satisfying one.
But thank you very much for doing this, and we want to encourage you, and we're looking forward to reading that Bradfield piece when that comes about.